Sorry.
It's okay. Facebook is still connecting. I'm waiting for it to go live for me. Okay, Joe, you're live.
All right.
You're live.
And we're live high in the skies of the Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport here on WCEG talkradio.com, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. I'm your host, Joe Flint of the People's Choice. And ladies and gentlemen, I have with me this evening one of the greatest minds in the legal system that I have come to know. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to know her. And I invite her to join us here on WCEG Talk Radio to discuss her platform and what exactly it is that she wants to continue doing for the citizens of Fulton County. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome without any further ado that of Judge Tamika Hrobowski, that's a H.R. Hrobowski people, Houston, who is currently serving as the Superior Court Judge in the county of Fulton County. Judge Houston, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you?
I am good. I am following that amazing introduction, but thank you very much.
Well, listen, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us on this medium. This is a very different time that we've all been in, a time for which I don't think any of us had ever expected to be in and have seen before, and hopefully a time that we'll never see again. So again, we want to thank you for taking time out of your work and out of the campaigning schedule to join us. So Judge, I want to get right into it. Why should the voters of Fulton County choose you to be the next Superior Court Judge?
They should choose me because they deserve a Superior Court judge that has the knowledge, the work ethic, and the experience to make intelligent decisions in an efficient manner. And I am that judge. I'm currently sitting by designation, in fact, as a Superior Court judge, and I'm handling thousands of domestic relations and protective order cases. Even as you mentioned, as we go through this pandemic, I'm continuing to work. And prior to coming onto the bench, I served in various roles in the legal system. I've been a prosecutor, I've been a federal agency counsel, I've been a special assistant U.S. attorney, I've been a criminal defense attorney, and even now I have a private practice, my law practice, and I'm a registered mediator. So I've handled a variety of different cases, represented a variety of different clients, and I believe that's what's required to handle the variety and the volume of cases that comes through Fulton County Superior Court.
Know why? Tell us who Tamika Hrobowski-Houston is. Who is this woman who is looking to continue serving the people of Fulton County?
Well, again, as I said, right now, I am currently someone sitting and serving Fulton County as we speak, handling the divorces and the custody cases and the protective orders, legitimations. I'm someone who is currently working for Fulton County, even as we speak.
Outside of Fulton County. Who is Judge Houston outside of Fulton County? What's the lifetime or the life like for Judge Houston outside of Fulton County? We're going to talk more about the work that you do because I hear that you do it and do it well. Okay. But I want to know, I want to know what the voters want to know outside of the bench. Because again, I think you and I have talked before, understanding that most voters have no earthly idea what judges do on a regular basis. All they know is that I come before the court and there's somebody sitting back there with a black robe and they're about to make the decision that's probably going to affect my entire lifetime. Not realizing that the judge actually has a life and is sometimes having to make difficult decisions for his or her own self. So tell us about Tamika Houston outside of the judicial system.
Well, I am a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I am active in the community. I volunteer with my sorority. I also volunteer with the city of South Fulton, which is where I live. I make time to volunteer with organizations such as the Enchanted Closet, which provides for young girls as they're preparing for prom. That's the big event. And then other events throughout the year where they're given different life lessons and seminars and things like that. So I give back to my community. I love my family. My mother is here in Atlanta with me, along with my husband. On the very rare occasion that I have spare time or I get to vacation, I like to attempt to play a little golf. But, you know, other than that, I work a lot.
Tempt, you have already beaten me, Judge. I don't even know how to swing a golf club to hit it anywhere. Yeah, sounds good. So, Judge, tell us what the day is like for Fulton County Superior Court judge. We understand, of course, that you hear cases, but give us a kind of a bird's eye view of what it is that you're doing while you're on the bench. What types of cases are you listening to, and what types of decisions are you making for the citizens of Fulton County?
Okay, and normally pre-COVID, I would be going into the courthouse. Post-COVID, I am coming into my home office and I'm handling cases via Zoom, but the cases are the same. We're continuing to do the work that we were doing before in terms of handling divorces, people who are coming before me to legitimate their children, men who are coming to legitimate their children, women who are coming to, who are filing paternity actions or child support actions. So all of that comes before me, and the decisions I make with respect to, you know, which parent is going to have custody, if grandparents are going to get visitation, if a young man is going to be able to legitimate his child, visitation schedules, all of that, child support amounts, all of that, those are things that are within my purview as I sit by designation. And then protective orders, when people feel that they are in fear for their safety due to domestic violence or some type of stalking.
But I want to dive a little deeper into that.
Okay.
Can you tell us, because I'm sure that there are young men out here who, you know, probably want to be legitimized, who want to know more about that process and wonder, what does it take? Unfortunately, you know, a lot of times in our community or in the community at large, people don't understand the rights that they have. Right. So as a father who is unfortunately under the impression that he doesn't have any more rights than that of seeing the child when the mother allows him to, can you tell us a little more about what the legitimation process is?
I can. I'd be happy to. And that is actually something that I believe that there's more to being on the bench than just issuing orders. There's an opportunity to educate at times, and I found that to be true, especially with respect to the legitimation process, because as you said, there are young men who they figure as long as they've signed the birth certificate, they're taking care of their child, there's, you know, he and the mom have come up with a schedule, they're fine, everything should be fine. And it usually is fine for them until a situation arises where the circumstances change, somebody gets a new significant other, somebody gets mad at the other party, and then their arrangement falls away. And dad is like, what is the problem? And the reality is, at that point, without the legitimation process, mom is the sole legal and physical custodian of a minor child. Dad has no rights at that point except to pay child support. And so men who come in, particularly in the protective order realm, where the conflict is over the fact that visitation has stopped and there's an altercation or conflict, and I have to let them know, I ask them, are you legitimated? And then I have to let them know, if they're not, that I can't give them any visitation rights because they are not considered the legal parent. And then they ask me, but I signed the birth certificate, I you know, give money. I say, but you have to go through the legal process. And it's actually simple, particularly if you're in the situation where you are amicable and you are able to work out a parenting plan and all of that. Because if you're able to do that, you're able to go through and get the child legitimated and it's no problem. And while I can't give legal advice as to exactly what they need to do, there are resources for them. There are forms on fultoncourt.org that they can go in. There's a legitimation packet, and you can walk through that and fill that out. When the courthouse was open, there's a Justice Resource Center where you can go and get assistance with free consultation with an attorney and get more information about filing. So I think that it's important. That type of education needs to occur about those resources and about those particular processes.
Is the common denominator in those situations? I think you kind of answered it, but I just want to be clear. Is it because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of education behind that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that part of it is people tend to view the legal system as not being accessible. And I think it's because, you know, I can't afford to do that. Or even if I can afford it, once I get in there, I won't be treated fairly. But there are resources, and I won't be able to afford an attorney, but there are resources for both.
And we move a little further beyond legitimation to child support.
Mm-hmm.
There was, and I did some research, but I didn't do enough of it. But there was a time, and I'll just be transparent, when I went through my divorce, there was a time back in the day that they were, I won't say taxing, but it was 24 to 27% of the I guess the male or whomever, yes, of the income. And that just floored me when I saw that.
That is no longer the case. That is no longer the case. No. And a lot of times you'll get guys that come in and they're like, I'm paying for this, this, and this. It doesn't take that much to take care of a child, or I want, and she's using it to do this and that. I want to be clear. The child support process now, it's a worksheet. It's literally a math problem where you input the gross monthly income for the mother and the father. And those amounts are taken and they're added together. And the presumption is, what is the amount that would be used on the child if the child was in the home with these two parents making this amount of money each month? And then that amount is taken out of there. So let's just say the total was maybe 6,000. This is not factual at all. It's just an example. 6,000 total. And you say that, okay, 1,200 of that would go towards the upkeep, the maintenance of the child, right? That 1,200 is then split between the two parties. The mother gets an amount, the father gets an amount. Now, only the non-custodial parent has to actually pay the amount, but that total amount is broken down. So the father is never paying the entire amount that it takes to take care of that child based upon the computation from the child support worksheet.
Amazing, Judge. And I'm here to tell you that they're probably, if I could use a scale of 100, there are 99 men who do not know that is the case. They are under the assumption that no matter what it is, they're going to be paying out of pocket an astronomical amount of money to take care of their child. And of course, there's always a concern from a male's perspective, which, in some instances, my mother would tell you is none of your business, but in some instances, it's not, our business what the money is going for. But if the money is not going for the child, then of course, that's a concern. So as we take a deeper dive into that, are there situations, and I'm sure there are there situations where they come back to court and ask for, I guess, a review of the child support? And if so, how does that go? Kind of the same process?
Yes, and it would be, you would come in and ask for a modification. That's a modification process. But again, without giving legal advice as to whether or not you should do it, there are factors that we look at with respect to the modification process. And you have to look at the changing needs. Have the needs of the child changed? Has there been a change in income for either of the parties? But again, most importantly, has there been a change in the needs of the child that warrants it? So
an amount of information that I am without a doubt hopeful that our listeners, be them male or female, will take and use to their advantage. So, Judge, these
packets are available. If you go on fultoncourt.org, they have the packets for modification, and they have, again, no legal advice, but it gives you some guidance.
outside of legitimation, outside of child support, tell us another event that you have to work on a regular basis.
The divorce process, and then the protective order process.
I said, Judge, I am almost sure that that is sometimes comical in your role. And I know that you can't laugh or smile or anything, you know, in the midst of it, but can you tell us, what are some of the bigger factors that take place in the divorce process outside of children? You know, because there are a lot of people who don't have children. So for those individuals who don't have children, what are the deciding factors for them who don't have children when it comes to a divorce? And
again, for them, it's basically, what are you all trying to do? And there are some, I realize that you come in there, nobody really wants to be in court. That's usually the case.
Right.
I have found during some of the divorces, and it's been surprising, and those have been the times that I have been able to kind of chuckle when they come in and they're so friendly to each other. They roll together, and as we're going, they're talking about who's going to pay for lunch and things like that. So at those points, it takes on a little lighter mood in the room. Or if people are coming in and they're not really serious about getting a divorce, maybe somebody decided they wanted to, you know, file just as an ultimatum type thing, and they're still living together completely as husband and wife, and it's
Judge, I don't know how you can do that. That's really difficult to still live with somebody and decide that you don't want to be married to them anymore.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You would be surprised. They are.
I can only imagine.
They are going.
I can remember some years ago. A very good friend of mine's, kind of to that same point. They got a divorce, and he just moved downstairs, and I was just like, I don't know that I could do that. That's very different. So, in situations where divorces don't have children involved, what do you see? And I don't know if you can really give us this answer, but what do you see as some of the bigger issues? Of course, I'm sure property comes up to one, and is spousal support. So is that a regular thing? Like, of course, we see, you know, on the media when it comes to, you know, famous people, everybody's always asking for spousal support. But is that a common thing in a divorce?
To be asked for? Yeah. You can ask for anything.
You can ask for it. That just doesn't mean that you're going to get it. Yeah.
There are statutory factors to consider when you are determining alimony and whether or not to award it. How, you know, and then you have to decide how much, how long, all that kind of thing. But it, you know, it's statutorily guided.
That is that's very interesting. Because again, when we see the big celebrities, you know, go through divorces, and we hear about the money that they're spending, I mean, it's just always crazy to think that they're spending a lot of money to take care of a spouse that they're no longer with. And so that's amazing. So tell me, when we get away from divorce, we get away from legitimation, we get away from child support, you mentioned one other.
The protective order process?
Protective order process. So is that based on the fact that somebody feels threatened, or what dictates a protective order?
You go to seek a protective order. Well, the process is that if you fear for your safety, we have to find that there is a reasonable fear for safety. And it's either as a result of family violence based upon a familial relationship, or of stalking, when there's a course of conduct that leads a person to fear for their safety. So we deal with that. That's been during this COVID process. The ex parte process has continued. You come in and only the petitioner, the one side who's asking for the order, meets with the judge. And then within 30 days, you attempt to get the other side served so you can come before me, and there's one other judge, to see if it can be extended for 12 months or longer sometimes, depending on the circumstances.
I only assume there may be levels. What does a protective order really do?
And here's the thing. It provides protection in terms of you're not supposed to contact the person directly, indirectly. You can't call, you don't leave voicemails, you don't send text messages, nothing. There should be no contact whatsoever. Practically speaking, you have it if the person, if you feel that the person is again trying to be in your presence, you can contact the police for assistance to have it enforced, those kinds of things. That's what it's for. You still have to take practical steps to be safe once you get it, but that is a first step.
So of course, Judge, I'm just going from television. I hear that there's a 50 feet, there's 100 feet, there's a 200 feet. Is that true?
Yes, I get to pick the yardage.
Really?
Yes, it's usually 100 to 200 yards, a football field.
So a football field, they can't be within the football field of each other. So
or two.
Got you.
It depends. Sometimes you have coworkers, sometimes you have people who live in the same building, things like that. So those are additional factors that you have to look at in making that determination. So if you're at work, sometimes you'll adjust it to where if they're at work, you just have to be a certain amount of feet. Or if they're at school, you have to just be a certain number of feet.
Right. So the school thing was, the work thing was about to just throw me off. So if somebody's at work and they are wanting to have a protective custody order from someone, how would that work if they work in the same building? That it just seems kind of odd.
200 yards away from work, at work, you'd have to maintain 10 yards.
I see. So Judge, if there is a area, if all four of those, I think we counted 4 different ones or maybe 5 different ones, what is one that you see more often in your role?
I actually see a lot just relating back to the exchange of the children. If either they're in the midst of a divorce or they were never married and there's been a circumstance change and now there's a new significant other that's accompanying the person to the exchange, then that kind of sets off, conflict. So I see a lot of that.
You apart from your opponent. What sets you apart from your opponent? In the beginning, you kind of gave us some information about what you currently do or your background in the judicial system. So what sets you apart from your opponent who is vying for the same seat?
Well, I believe I have the broadest range of legal experience in terms of the roles that I have filled in my legal career, having done everything, like I said, from being a prosecutor, then being on the other side, being a defense attorney, handling civil cases in state court and federal court, both at the appellate level and at the trial level. I've handled civil cases, criminal cases. I've prosecuted Social Security fraud. So I've been in front of the bench, and even now, outside of what I do on the bench, I still have a practice to a certain degree. So I am still, it's still fresh with me in terms of having been in that role in front of the bench. So I believe that combination of legal and judicial experience has uniquely prepared me to come in and be ready to hit the ground running, particularly with the family division cases, seeing that I handle those, again, sitting by designation as a Superior Court judge from the conferences, through motions, through discovery disputes, all the way through final trial. So, that's just my experience and what I would bring to the bench.
All right, so Judge, it is August 11th and the people are at the poll and they are waiting to make their final decision. They have decided that, we got enough information about the election. We got enough information of what a Fulton County Superior Court judge does. What's going to be the thing? You kind of outlined us. but what's going to be the thing? What's the thing that makes you so special? I think I know what it is, but I want to hear you say it because I think it's the very thing that separates you. And I only say this, Judge, because in previous conversations and understanding what a Superior Court judge does, we know that it's not an easy job to walk away from the bench every day. It's not an easy job to make the decisions for people's lives each and every day of your life. It's not easy. So what are you doing that's going to make you the better qualified candidate?
Well, I'll just say this. I believe that once they get to the polls, they'll have the voters will have a choice to make.
Yes.
And they can choose the judge that has the broadest range of legal experience spanning 27 years, who currently has a law mediation practice and was recently named the 2020 Georgia super lawyer. Or they can choose the judge who understands that the decisions that are made in these courtrooms have far-reaching consequences and can affect people at the lowest points in their lives. Or they can choose the judge who is currently sitting by designation, handling thousands of domestic relations and protective order cases. Or they can choose the judge that is neutral, knowledgeable, and respectful. That is what the litigants that come into my courtroom are met with. That's the judge that they see on a daily basis. Or they can choose the judge that simply wants to do the work and do it well. I take pride in doing the work and doing it well. Or they can decide as they're standing there that they want to select the judge that brings all of that to the bench. And they would vote for me, Tamika Hrobowski-Houston.
Because I think you said you do the work and you do it well. That's a pretty catchy statement. And I think that's something that will help you throughout this. So tell us, how every day that you are currently serving in this role, how did the designee come about? How did you get chosen as the designee for this particular role?
Okay. Currently, I am sitting by designation with Judge Joe Flint.
Okay.
I've been with him since 2017. I started my initial appointment. I came in, I interviewed with a panel that consisted of the 4 family court judges at the time, as well as the heads of organizations that have a stake in domestic relations issues, like the Volunteer Lawyer Foundation, the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys. I think there was Safe Families. There was a large contingency of individuals that I had to sit in front of for that interview. And as part of the family law bench at the time, ironically, there was Judge Constance Russell. She is actually the judge whose seat is being vacated, the seat that I'm running for. And so I was appointed to work with her initially. And when I got news that I was appointed, I was advised that it was a unanimous appointment. And I was proud to say that she was one of those judges that was there who wanted to see me on in the role of the judicial officer at the time. So that's how I came to get on the bench.
Will you have any say-so in the ability to register to vote on the day of election? Will that come through Superior Court?
I don't know.
That's something that I want to look more into. So in speaking of what goes through the Superior Court, can you give us the judicial levels of court? Can you tell us the lowest level of court in Georgia and what is the highest level of courts in the state of Georgia?
Okay, well, you have the individual city courts in the municipalities, like City of South Fulton has their court. You have City of Atlanta, they have their city courts, Brookhaven, Dorville, all the individual cities. And then you have magistrate court, which is over at the courthouse. And you have state court, Superior Court, and then we have the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of Georgia.
Got you. So Superior Court would be the third, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, the third lowest court in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay, I don't like to use the word lowest, but
And we're the busiest trial court. Fulton County in particular is the busiest trial court in the state of Georgia. Superior Court is where most people on a day-to-day basis, depending on what they were coming to court for, where they would come, because you have the variety of domestic relations issues. You have those. Then you have any property disputes if your neighbors are encroaching on your land. And then if you have a wrongful death action, if you have serious personal injury, and of course, felony crimes and adoptions. That's the feel-good part of Superior Court. All of those would come through Superior Court.
So adoptions, tell us a little bit about that process.
Okay. In terms of handling the adoptions, those
right. So I have seen, and I'm sorry for cutting you off. I have seen, well, I know family-wise, there have been 2 adoptions in my family. Okay. And I know once, the process didn't go through. And then there was another time that the process, or the second time around, the process did go through. Okay. So I guess from the judge's perspective, what are some of the determining factors that allows a person, of course I can think of, just the general things, but what are some bigger determining factors that makes the difference in awarding, a husband and wife or an individual custody of a child in an adoption?
And again, and I think as the same as with the overarching intent for any family law case involving a child, is we're looking at the best interests of the child and whether or not that process is going to be in the best interest of the child. And of course, you have to protect the rights of the parents whose rights are being cut off at that point and terminated in order to make that adoption happen. So you have to take all of that into consideration.
Okay.
When dealing with the adoptions. And just let me clarify, going back to what you mentioned about the election issues, in terms of if that comes to be an issue, if there was a disagreement with it and they needed to litigate it, I would not have a say in making that happen. But if they needed to litigate it, then that would come before the Superior Court.
I was just about to ask, would that be something that, I guess that should have been my question, is that something that comes before the Superior Court, or would that be something that goes to the Court of Appeals?
No, it would start in the Superior Court. If it had
Got you. That should be interesting. So I don't know if you could answer this question, or would you be in favor of same-day registration with the ability to vote?
And precisely because it would be something that might come before me, under my oath, I can't give a stance because I have to face it completely neutral and be open to hearing both sides and what they have to present and make my decision based solely on.
I'm gonna tell you, Judge, I'm for it. You don't have to. I'm for it. I think they should do it. I think they should allow people to register and vote that day. So I'm going to argue that side. Okay. And they should come before your court. I got you, Judge. I got you. I know you can't say anything.
I can't. Yes, I can't. I'm not one way or the other. I am a clean slate. That is the neutral part of that.
I understand. I absolutely understand. So, Judge, tell us what this campaign has been like for you. What has the campaign been like? What have you learned in this particular arena?
Well, what has it been like? It's been unlike anything I've ever experienced because I've never run for office before. Right. Like I said, I was appointed. So going through this process, it's just been a learning experience. And I think it's completely different than what I expected, simply because just the whole current state of the world in this pandemic is different. So I, initially envisioned the going out and the meeting and greeting in person and shaking hands, these kinds of things being where I'm sitting there right next to you or across from you, and being able to make those types of connections. And that has not been possible because of, just the state that we're in right now with the, the breadth of this pandemic.
what I think this does is it really gives a candidate an opportunity to really show who they are, because anybody can get out and shake hands and kiss babies.
True.
I mean, I do that every day, Judge. I'm just going to tell you, I do that every day, and I'm not running for office. So, you know, in this particular, you know, pandemic, it kind of reminds me of what the elections must have been like in the early years of the U.S., because there was no, you know, people weren't driving horses and buggies from state to state, you know, trying to get people to vote for them. It had to be based on their character, had to be based on their, you know, their reputation, as well as on the findings of them. I mean, their background, what they've done in the past. And so that, I think, in my opinion, has made this election, it has educated the voter better than any time before.
And
I think because
I've been impressed by some of the questions that I've gotten from voters. And it shows that they're interested in learning exactly what your experience is and exactly how you're going to apply it to the position. So I have appreciated those questions.
I tell you, Judge, as I said in the beginning, people have no idea what you know, they come to court afraid. Most of the time, people are afraid when they come to court because they only think, or when you mention it in a certain community, people are just afraid that they're going to go there and they're going to get a sentence or, you know, something like that. And especially going back to the conversation of a father who is looking to be legitimized, or a father who is, you know, dealing with the child support issue. It's good to know that that they actually have an advocate. And I don't mean that you're siding with the fathers, but they have an advocate in that someone is actually listening and taking into consideration everything. Because there's also the myth, Judge, and I think you may have heard this, is that if it's a woman judge, oh, I'm screwed. she's going to throw me under the bus and I'm not going to be able to do anything because it's a female judge. Have you heard that?
And actually, I heard that a couple of weeks ago, and I heard that from someone who had come before me. But they went on to say that that's what they thought, but that's not what they got. They were actually indicating that's what they walked in thinking. They walked out feeling like they had been heard and that they had been treated fairly. And I have to say that for me, that particular, I guess, people have that outlook on going to court, and they have that, and I think it all stems from the experience that you have in court. And that's why I think it's important for me to be neutral, to be knowledgeable, and to be respectful. And also, when I came onto the bench, I wholeheartedly believe, and it has been reinforced every day that I've been there, that people need to be heard. They want to be heard. They are entitled to be heard. Then the judges has a duty to give them their undivided attention and to treat them with respect. And I think that if a litigant can walk out of the courtroom, even when they didn't win, and they can say, okay, I felt like my position was heard. She got my argument. I just didn't win this day because she did tell me, she did explain that the law wasn't on my side, or that wasn't how the statute went. And then they can walk away satisfied, because when you hear those stories about how court went, people don't usually run out, reciting statute numbers. They usually start saying, they didn't listen to me, or they didn't let me talk. And no, that just wasn't fair. She wasn't even thinking about me. And that's the kind of experience that people relate. So I think if you can go in with just that baseline of allowing people to be heard, giving them your undivided attention, and then treating them with respect, I think that's half the battle. And I've actually had litigants relate that to me, that they felt like I listened to them. One guy told me because I asked good questions, he knew that I had been listening. So he was.
So that's a good compliment, Judge. That's a good compliment that that someone from your questions felt like you were a good judge. Right. So how do we debunk that myth? How do we take away the myth that if I go before this judge, or when I go to the courthouse, I'm afraid because I don't know what's going to be the outcome? As you know, there's an unrest in the U.S. right now behind law enforcement and the legal system, and and how, let's just be honest, how African Americans have been treated based on the legal system. How do you, in your role, how do you get rid of that myth? How do you make, I know that you said, you know, in conversation and listening to them, but how can you just as an individual get rid of that stigma that the court system is not for us? Because there's this belief that it is not for us, whether it's coming before you in Superior Court, going before somebody in state court, or in the municipal court, or the Court of Appeals, or wherever. There's just this misconception or this belief that, or I will quote it, a system that was not built for us is not for us. That's what is said quite often. So how do we fix that?
And here's the thing, to start at the beginning, when you said you don't know coming in what's going to happen.
Right.
That's what you want. You don't want to know that I'm sitting there with my mind already made up. You don't want to walk into that courtroom.
Right.
So my mind is already made up.
Judge, I feel like when your mind is made up, there is no room for, I just feel that, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, but seriously, when they walk in terms of anything outside that doesn't pertain particularly to the parties in front of me, that has no bearing on their case.
Right.
And need to be in a position to feel that that's the case. And I think that's shored up by the fact that you feel like you're being heard and that the judge is paying attention to you at that particular time.
Right.
And you feel like, because again, this is the most important case to those litigants in front of you.
Right.
Do you see what the litigants that are before me, that is there. It may be one of 20 for that day for me, but for them, this is the only case that means anything to them. And I intend to impress upon them that I get that I understand that, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. So I think that's where we start. Then, like you just mentioned, with respect to how people are now a little more involved in the process of the elections and getting out to vote and wanting to make an informed and educated decision when they vote. I think that is absolutely what you need to do. And then even once someone is elected to the bench, my goal is to make you proud of your vote, to make you feel as if your vote was well spent in electing me to that position. And we have heard talk about the transparency of the bench and what that promotes confidence. And here's the thing, again, it's transparent. You can go any day of the week to the courthouse and go into any of those courtrooms and sit down and watch how that judge works, how that trial went, how that person was treated, any day of the week. And it's almost it's random. You can just pop up. It's not planned. So you are there and you're getting what probably goes on a day-to-day basis because no one's preparing for your arrival. You can just show up.
Well, Judge, in saying that, I guarantee you there are some guys out here looking for child support help and legitimation help. They're probably going to come and sit in the courtroom now and be like, I need to see who this Judge Tamika is, this Judge Houston is. I want to know who she is so I can find out if she'll be on my side. They're going to watch repeatedly if you will, be fair, which there's no question that you will be. Judge, we have just...
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And I would send them, and if they said something, I'd send them up to get all the information that they needed so that they'd be prepared. Because I think that's another part of it is we need to make people aware of what we expect of them in coming into the courtroom and coming into the courthouse, and then what they can expect from us when they come into the courthouse as well.
Because the other part, again, outside of them, not understanding, sometimes they get lawyers who are just not on their side and who are not working for them. I can only imagine how difficult that must be as a judge to, now here's a question because we only have a few minutes left, but I have to ask you this. Okay. As a judge and lawyers that come before you, maybe lawyers that who don't have a good reputation in supporting people, in your neutral role, have you ever had to pull, again, Judge, I'm going from television, I watch a lot of TV, so have you had to stop and pull the counselors aside to discuss something outside of the conversation that's being had with the litigants?
Fortunately, I have not, because normally you know, your performance is tied to your pay with, you know, normally that's tied to your pay. So you want to do as good a job as possible in representing your client. So, you know, that's, that part unfortunately, I haven't had to deal with that.
Judge, I probably need to stop watching so much TV and just come to your courtroom and sit and see how an actual trial goes.
And my courtroom doors are open. You are welcome.
I'll do that. Judge, as we get ready to wrap up, because we're short on time here, I want for you to give us your social media platforms. Okay. Where can the voters find you? In addition to that, I want to end the same way we started. Why should the voters of Fulton County vote for Judge Tamika Hrobowski-Houston? I like saying Hrobowski. I don't know. It's just something about it. It has a nice
You pronounced it perfectly.
Yeah. So what is your social media platforms? Where can they find who you are and what you're about? And then tell us more about why the citizens of Fulton County should vote for you for Superior Court Judge.
Okay, the Facebook page for the campaign is Elect Tamika Hrobowski-Houston. Mm-hmm. The Twitter is at Judge Houston, okay. And Instagram is Elect Hrobowski-Houston.
Got you.
And as far as voting for me, again, the Fulton County deserves a Superior Court judge that has the knowledge, the work ethic, and the experience to make intelligent decisions in an efficient manner. Right. So on August 11th, in the voting booth, or by absentee ballot or doing early voting, which starts July 20th, Fulton County, yes, July 20th, and Fulton County has a choice to make. And again, you can choose the judge that has the broadest range of legal experience, spanning 27 years. You can choose the judge that is currently sitting by designation as a Superior Court judge and serving Fulton County, even in the midst of this pandemic, and recognizing that the decisions that are made in these courtrooms have far-reaching consequences. Or you can choose the judge that is neutral, knowledgeable, and respectful. Or you can choose the judge that simply takes pride in doing the work and doing it well. Or Fulton County, you can decide that you deserve the judge that brings all of the above to the bench. And you can do that by voting for me, Tamika Hrobowski-Houston. Thank you in advance for your support, your prayers, and your vote. Thank you.
Now, I don't know, Judge. I almost feel like all those options led to the same person. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
All of the above. That's me.
I felt like all of those led to the same person. Listen, I want to thank you so much for coming to WCEG Network, as well as here on the People's Choice, to give our listeners, our viewers, an opportunity to learn who you are and more about your platform. I encourage all of our listeners and our viewers via Facebook to go on those social media platforms to learn more about who Judge Houston is and what she's about.
One more thing, I do want to say that I do want to offer my phone number if there are any questions, 770-909-1100.
Say it one more time, Judge.
770-909-1100.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first on the People's Choice on WCEG TalkRadio.com, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, live with Judge Tamika Hrobowski-Houston, who is looking for your support come August 11th to be the Superior Court Judge for Fulton County, Georgia. Judge, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. We understand that you're doing the work and you're doing it well, so we encourage you to continue doing so. Judge, one last thing before we let you go. How many cases do you hear before you get on the campaign every day, or are you able to do both?
I'm doing both. I do them first.
Yeah.
I usually have, about 15 to 18. It just depends. It just depends.
Wow. Well, listen, that's good for the people to know that even in the midst of campaigning, you're still doing the work and you're listening to cases each and every day. Again, Judge, thank you.
Right, and writing orders. But I want to thank you all for this platform at WCEG The People's Choice. Thank you, Reverend Joe Flint, and thank you, Penny Rogers, for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Judge Houston, that's the Joe Flint difference, and we thank you so much for being on here with us on the People's Choice and WCEG. Thank you so much, and you have a good evening.
All right, take care. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. We are still live on Facebook. As soon as Joe can show his face again, I see his Batman logo. Oh, there he is.
I am back.
I'm
back.
quiet, and you guys can go. We're still live.
All right. Good evening, and welcome to WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. This is the People's Choice, and I'm your host, Joe Flint. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest this evening who is vying for your support come August 11th. It's the same time, right? August 11th for you, who's vying for your support for school board. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
We have with us live Franchesca Warren. Miss Warren, thank you so much for joining us here on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, the People's Choice. I want to jump right into this.
Okay.
Ms. Warren, tell us who you are and what you're about, and why should the people elect you for school board?
So, of course, my name is Franchesca Warren. I am a mother, a long-time resident of South Fulton, and I am the mother of 4 children who are products of South Fulton schools, currently in and a graduate. And I really, I got my start as an advocate. So I really, about 7 years ago, I started working with the schools, going to school board meetings, really being very involved in the inner workings on how schools work. And this came from my background of being a teacher. So I was an educator for about 15 years. I was in administration. I've worked all throughout the metro area as a literacy coordinator, working with superintendents, principals, parents, the whole stakeholders. And what I found is that in South Fulton, we have a beautiful community with highly engaged people, but we have to do something different if we want our schools to be top notch, every school in the district in South Fulton. And so about 6 years ago, I started going to board meetings, talking with board members, trying to get the advocacy down for our parents, which led me to start a group called South Fulton Parents for Education. And so for the last 4 years, we're 501(c), and we work on bridging the gap between home and school. So we attend board meetings, we lobby for policies. We really help our parents understand, here's how you use your voice, and here's how you do it effectively.
So, Ms. Warren, I have a very serious question concerning the board and the work that the board does. So can you tell us, can you differentiate the work of the board and the work of the superintendent? What does the board do and what does the superintendent do?
So the board sets policy. That's very important for people to understand. You set policy and the superintendent does the daily running of the schools, of the school system. So it is a relationship where the board employs the superintendent and you employ somebody in that seat that can handle the job and what comes with that.
Right. So in understanding that you all set policy, how much of your policy plays into the day-to-day work of the superintendent?
I think it plays into, it's intertwined all together. Because you're running a school system where you have to set policies to make sure that there's equity. And where a lot of discrepancies come in is when you're not setting good policy so people can infer it any way that they want. For example, we've been having a lot of conversations around equity in the school. And you have to have an equity policy to understand that, because if it's not policy, it doesn't have to be followed. So you have to work really hard to make sure that all stakeholders understand the need for the policy, and then bringing stakeholders together for you to draft a policy that is inclusive, that goes through many iterations, so that the superintendent, the principals, your teachers, just your whole school system can follow it, and it can be used to enhance education, not used to further hurt kids.
Got you. So I have a question concerning your role in education. You said you taught for 15 years, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And in your teaching in the public school sector, the entire 15 years?
Absolutely.
What do you see as one of the biggest needs of the public school system? Now, Ms. Warren, I'm going to warn you, I'm a product of Atlanta Public Schools. So I have nothing against Fulton County schools, but I am an APS graduate, and I'm a graduate of the best and only high school in the state of Georgia. No offense to anybody else on this line, but that is Booker T. Fair Washington Comprehensive High School, where learning truly comes alive.
Absolutely.
So, but outside, I just always have to give my school a plug. But in knowing that, what do you see as the biggest gap in the public school sector?
Parents, especially Black and brown parents, don't understand how their voice is powerful. And this is what I mean. When you talk about a school like Washington High School that has graduates all the way back from the 1920s, 1930s, they are
coming to school. Talk about it.
They are coming to school and they are advocating and they are saying, no, we want this. Our parents have to understand that in order to get what you want, you have to be willing to say it. And once you can say it and you can verbalize it, then you can work for it. And so one of the things that I've taught, that we've tried to teach parents, is that you have a voice and you have to use it. Your voice may mean that you have to go to a board meeting and you might have to say, I don't agree. It might mean that you send an email. It may mean that you get another group of parents together, but that voice is critical. Like you, I worked in Atlanta Public Schools for a very long time. And one of the things that I tell people is when you're looking at schools like Washington, like Mays, like Douglas, like Westlake, like Creekside, like Langston Hughes in Fulton County, parents who get things done are parents who are vocal. So I tell parents there's a way for you to ask and get what you need. And if you understand that, then nothing else matters because you're a taxpayer. And so once you realize that and you understand that, you look at things differently. So you're not coming to the school district and saying, can you do this? You're going to the school district and saying, here's your policy. I don't see it being followed. Here's what I need you to do. It's a totally different conversation.
Why do you think parents are so, and I'm sorry, why do you think there's such apathy of parents' engagement, parent involvement? Why do you think there's such?
It's from a multitude of reasons, but the three biggest reasons is that number one, I'm a parent and I didn't have a good experience in the school system. So I have this perception that the school is out to get me, they don't like my child. But then on the other side, we've been trained to work. And so a lot of things that we should be paying attention to, it goes by us and we say, oh, I'll get to it next. And then last but not least, in education, we use a lot of jargon. So we're always talking in education jargon, and parents are like, what are you talking about? So we have to, as a community, we have to come together because the main goal is to educate children, but it's also to build up the community. Your schools belong to the community and the community belongs to the schools. And once everybody understands that, there's a collaboration that happens that says, hey, I know that Langston Hughes is in need of this resource, the community has it, and you work in tandem together. But until you realize that, you think that you're going against the school or the school is competing against you, when in reality, it's a community effort. And so when we're looking at South Fulton Parents for Education, and we have over 3,000 members and people are attending board meetings and they're talking about things, I always tell them that's the first step to advocacy. I don't have to like what you say, but if you're out there and you are working for students and for kids and for schools, then I can respect it and we can work together.
You know, I'm sorry, Ms. Chapman, did you have something? And welcome.
No, I said very good. I said very good.
Welcome, by the way, Ms. Chapman.
Thank you, Joe Flint.
Thank you for joining us. I want to, I think there's just a huge gap in understanding the importance of the public school sector. I got to tell you, I am, again, being a product of the public schools, I believe in them and I know that they can work. And I know that they work best when there is parent involvement, but then when the community is involved, and then also when we have board members who who are actually engaged in the day-to-day processes and policies. But here lately, I've seen more board people who are more business-minded and not educational-minded. Now, there needs to be a level of business on the board, but what happens when we have everybody on the board who's business-minded and not like you, who's an educator and who can provide some real insight into what takes place on a day-to-day basis?
I think you start to have where people don't understand how policy impacts kids, students, teachers, and schools. So me coming in, when you're looking at a policy around testing, it sounds really good to sit in a meeting and say, we're going to have these several series of high stakes testing, right? Let's say we have 4 series of it, 4 times a year. But as a teacher, as a student, how does that really impact me? What does that do to my day-to-day learning? And so what I'm bringing to the board is not only the practical knowledge of here's how policy affects a classroom, but I've also spent the last 7 years of my career working with superintendents, working with families. And so I understand the other side of the policy making. So you have to, it's a balance, but you have to be willing to go through and say, how does this affect students? How does this affect teachers? How does this affect the community? Looking now, we're talking about, we're in the middle of a pandemic. How does the opening of schools affect students, teachers, communities? So those are things you have to remember, because it is about policy, but behind policy, you have real human people who need schools and who want their schools to do well. And so you have to find that balance. And it's not easy, but it's something that I've been in education. My oldest son is 20. I've been in education 19 years. So for me, this is a passion. And so you know that when you're going into schools and you're talking to parents, you don't know how it affects a parent unless you've talked to them or you're talking to a student. And not just once a year or twice a semester, but you're consistently in schools and you're asking teachers, what do you think about this? And teachers feel comfortable enough to say, this didn't really go well, or I think we should revise this, because that's how you bring about positive change.
Why now? Why do you feel now is the time for you to serve in this role as a board member of the Fulton County Board of Education?
I think it's twofold. So I am thankful for the path that Linda Bryant set for her 25 years on the board. We thank her. But knowing that she has decided not to run again, it's important for us to bring somebody in on the board who not only has children in the system, because I have a kindergartner, I have a 5th grader, and I have a 7th grader, because I understand what is happening. I'm in it every day. I'm dropping my kids off. I'm talking to them, but also that advocacy piece. It's 2020, and I want to make sure that what we're doing makes sense. And so knowing that, it's a perfect time for us to say, Ms. Bryant has decided not to seek re-election. Okay, we're bringing someone in new. How does this affect? How can we change what we're doing in a good way? How can we bring about some new things? In 2020, we should be working on innovation, because we're raising kids who will have jobs that we haven't even thought about. And so it's really important for someone who's in the school system, who's done a lot of work nationally, to bring that to Fulton County. I can't hear you.
Chapman, I couldn't tell. Were you saying something else?
No, I said very good.
Okay. Ms. Chapman, what are your thoughts on Ms. Warren, and how do you serve in the capacity right now? What are you doing with us?
Oh, well, I've been working in the community ever since 2005. I did PTA at Westlake. My son is a product of Westlake. And right now, it is very important for us to get the right person in that seat. Making sure that our kids have someone to guide them along the way. Again, Ms. Warren, her job is going to be able to set policies and procedures. The soup is for the superintendent to run the day-to-day. But what I like about Ms. Warren, I say she's a go-getter. She's out there and so forth. This is what I'm looking for in that. And what I'm going to say, and then you can turn it over, and I'm asking Ms. Warren, just so say, elections is funny. You wake up on the 11th, the 12th, and you done lost the election. Will you continue on working with our kids? Because people usually tend, when they lose these elections, they go into their house, they go in hiding, and you don't see them no more until another election when it's time to run for something else. So I know you have that passion for our kids. Will you still have that passion if you're not elected on August the 12th?
Absolutely. This is a passion. You know, we've been doing this work for 4 years. So long before I ever thought that I would run for political office, it was important to me because I'm a parent and because I'm a community member, and I don't plan on leaving South Fulton anytime soon. So the work that we do is going to be beneficial for generations to come. And so it's not a situation of, if I don't win, I'm going to go into hiding. I'll probably even be more vocal. We have to, I don't want to say take back our schools, that's not the right, but we need to be an integral part of our schools. Absolutely. We have to show up, and continue to do it, and to do it when it's hard, do it when to be a leader, you have to make decisions that people don't necessarily agree with, but as long as you keep students at the forefront, you don't have to worry about the politics of it all.
Absolutely.
Edmund, for your words. Ms. Warren, can you tell us day one, you being a board member of the Fulton County School System, what is it that the residents of your district, what district would that be?
So it's District 4, that's Langston Hughes Cluster, Creekside Cluster, and Westlake Cluster.
Forward to in District 4, you as their representative for that district.
So visibility, right? When a lot of people have a perception on how a board member should operate or what they should do, it's going to be very important for me to get in the schools, not in a way that's prying, but in a way that's understanding how the schools work. Not just the schools that my kids attend, but all schools. And so not only being in there, but talking to parents at pickup and drop off, and what are the crown jewels, what's happening in your school that people don't know about. And then it's going to be also really important for me to do a survey of District 4 parents, students, and teachers, because that is the data that you need as you're going into making decisions. I need to see, do teachers want to teach in my district? I need to see, are parents sending their kids to school in my district? And then probably most importantly, how do the students feel? And that's something for me that happens day one, because that is the data that I need that's going to determine everything else. And then also understanding that parents are coming here and they're expecting a level of education. They're expecting their child to get a certain type of education. And so figuring out what are the gaps and then working within the community to fill them. This is not something I can do by myself. I will have to call on the Demita Chapmans and the Bill Edwards and the people in the community who can help and say, we need this, how can we work together? And I think that is critical because, no one says, South Fulton, I live in such and such, we're all South Fulton. So we have to work together with all the municipalities to make sure that our kids get what they need.
Very good.
In years past, I can remember when I was in elementary and middle school, even high school, I think, I can remember that when the school board representative came, it made everybody, it put everybody on their pins and needles. Yeah. The principal, the teachers, everybody was doing their job. I almost believe that there's just, I don't want to say it should be a fear, but I almost believe that there's just no reverence of what the school board does anymore. I just don't see that people are as excited or as concerned about the policies and the things that the Board of Education makes anymore. It just seems that, and this is why I asked this question in the very beginning, it seems that the superintendent runs with it, and the board follows the superintendent as opposed to the board not so much dictating, but guiding the superintendent.
Absolutely. I tell parents all the time that, of course, a national election is important, but your local elections affect you on a daily basis. So if you don't know who your school board member, these are decisions that affect you 180 days a year because your kids are there. So for me, it's educating parents on here's what we do, here's what we don't do, and here's how I fit into the matrix. But a lot of that goes into visibility, right? Making sure that I'm there on a consistent basis. I'm talking to parents on the Friday night games. During the week, I'm at events, because that way parents can say, oh, I know you hold this. Hey, can you help me with this? And so even if I can't solve their problem, I can help them and say, let me reach out to this person and I'll come back to you. But that's what it takes to lead in 2020. You cannot be afraid to get out with the people. If you're just going to get out when it's time for an election, or you're only going to get to one cluster, that's not enough. And so it's critical for us to go through and to really be visible, and during the good times and the bad times. Because if you're a parent like me, I have 30 questions. I want to know this. Okay, ask me about this. So you have to be ready for that. And you're not going to be ready for that if you don't understand education, but also understanding people and building relationships. And that to me is key. And I want people to understand that. And to, when you see me out, I might be at Publix, stop me. Because as a parent, I understand that when something is wrong or not right with your child's education, you want answers now. You don't want to wait 3 days.
Seems to me, I think I was headed down this road earlier in this conversation. It seems to me that the support that's needed behind the public school system is no longer there. And I say that because now we have charter schools that have come in and they have almost taken over our entire school system. Now, I heard once, and I don't know if this is true, you correct me, that Fulton County turned into a complete charter school system, or was that something that was on the books or that was considered before?
So it is a charter school system, but it's not, that doesn't really have to deal with the charter schools. It's how it's run, how it's operated. So as a charter school system, you don't have the same restrictions that a regular school, you have some flexibility. So that's what that is about.
Differentiate Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton County Schools, Cobb County Schools, Gwinnett County Schools. Of those that are named, is Fulton County the only charter school system in the metro area?
No, Atlanta.
Based on how you described it, okay.
Right, no, Atlanta's a charter school district. So is Marietta City. I don't think Cobb County is, but there's several in the metro area. And what it does, it loosens up your restrictions, but it also gives you more ways to be able to generate, get more funds for your students. So this happened a couple of years ago.
When that happened for Fulton County. So what's the difference in a charter public school and a charter school?
So a charter public school and a charter are basically the same. They're still public schools, but they are supposed to operate in an innovative way. So this has been a conversation all throughout South Fulton. Charter schools are not, public schools are not. And one of the things that I've asked parents to do is that we are deep in the weeds. We can't fight each other over the public and the charter. What we need to focus on is, are our programs of study really innovative? And what I mean is, if my child goes to Chattahoochee Hills Charter, is that program innovative, right? Or if my child goes to Renaissance Middle, is that program of study innovative? And that takes, because when we fight within the community about which school is better, students lose. And so if we really have to examine what are kids learning, what are we putting in front of them? And then if we focus on that, that would transform our schools and the argument would be null and void. And I think that you have really good public schools, you have really good charter schools, you have really bad charter schools, you have really bad public schools, but no one differentiates that when they talk about South Fulton. So as a community, when we say South Fulton strong, we mean all schools. We mean all schools, public, charter, and private, because we are one, and that is how the rest of the metro area views us.
Question. Is it true that charter schools pull from the regular public school? And I say that in the contents, for every charter school that's built in a district, more often than never, parents see it as a choice and they're like, oh, this school is going to be different, this school is going to be better. So they take their children out of, let's just say Langston Hughes, which is, I assume it's a public school. They take their child out of Langston Hughes and put it in, I don't know, W.E.B. Du Bois Academic Academy.
Absolutely.
And they decide that this is where they want their child to go. Is it true, or is it a factor that that's pulling pupil support, that's pulling funds from the public school and putting it into the charter school?
Anytime a child leaves their home school and goes to another school, it affects their FTE, right? But again, why are they leaving? What is it that this school has that as a parent, I feel like would better suit my child? And that's a conversation that we have to have as a community. What are we doing in developing programs and what kids learn, so that it doesn't matter where I go to or where I decide to send my child is going to have a rigorous experience. So that conversation, it's going to be hard. It's going to hurt people's feelings, but it's something that we have to have, because in 2020, we can't fight one another. We have to focus on community first.
That wholeheartedly. I think from listening to you, you definitely have a great tone and position to make that joint venture to work between public and charter schools. My children my oldest daughter will be a senior this year, and my next daughter will be a junior, and they attend Mays High School, as you mentioned earlier. But I remember when they were in elementary school in 2012 and 2013, and the school closures were happening, and I was getting extremely upset. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to tell you, I was pissed off because I felt like the school system had failed our students. And I continue in some instances. Again, my children are products of Atlanta Public School as well. I figured if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for them.
Absolutely.
But I feel like the system failed those children in those communities when they closed the schools down. And get it, I'm not making the policy, I'm not paying the bills for the school system, but one of the bigger arguments that they chose to use, and which I thought was just not resonating with the residents, was that the fact there's not enough children here to make this school to keep it going. Yeah. So how do you convey that to a parent to say we got to close the school because there are not enough students here? Why aren't there enough students here? It's a bigger picture. Absolutely. They got rid of all of, let's just be honest, they got rid of all the projects, or what we know as projects, in the city of Atlanta. So that got rid of people that lived in communities that were able to attend these schools that were full at one point. Absolutely. And now they're closing the schools down, and they have made it where other entities have been able to come in and take over the schools. So Ms. Warren, I ask you, how will you make the difference at being that fair voice between public, between charter, between parents, between teachers, between students, between parents, and between all that play a role in between? Because whereas you will make a difference, you have board members that won't always go with you. So how will they rely on you to be that voice of reasoning all the time?
I think that you have to, like you said, looking at the larger picture. So when you're talking about a school closure, that's when you need your parents to come out. On August the 12th, when I win this seat, and I talk to my parents and I say, this isn't the end, this is the beginning. So when you're seeing that your neighborhood school is at half capacity, I need you to come out and demand it. Why is it at half capacity? I put the position out that in South Fulton right now, as it stands, we have enough charters. Let our don't bring in any more schools. We have enough charters. We have enough public schools. We have enough private schools. And here's why I say this. Let us get it right. Let us get it right. Let us really focus on making sure that our programs of study are up to par, because otherwise we are moving away students from where they live and where we need to build our equity in our community. Now, as a parent, I'm also telling parents that you have to be educated and you have to understand that why are people trying to come into our community? I've said this for a long time, and that South Fulton is a beautiful community. We have beautiful homes. We have, people want to live here. And so if that's the case, we have to do a better job of branding what our schools offer. So many people come and say, oh, that school doesn't do that. That's not true. Do we know that Langston-Hughes has the number one amount of students enrolled in dual enrollment in the state of Georgia? They have the most. That is not something that most people know. And so when you're talking about that, we have to do a better job of branding and marketing our schools, making sure that every parent, even the parent who is not on social media, even the parent who doesn't really like the school, they understand what we do well. And we work on what we don't do well, because that is going to naturally balance out parents thinking that they're not getting something at their school. So it's something that it's a whole community effort. So, when you're driving by and you look on the billboard and it says, we have 150 students graduating from dual enrollment, that's something that parents will say, oh, wow, I didn't know that Langston-Hughes was doing that. Wow, let me find that out. Going to Creekside, looking at their agriculture program, their band is phenomenal. So looking at Westlake and their magnet program, we have to really do a good job of messaging that so that parents know that what they need is in the community. And then working with our charters, again, to make sure that it's equal before we bring in more schools. So, and when you're talking about in Atlanta, when the projects closed down, I was a teacher at South Atlanta High School. So I remember when Jonesboro North and South shut down and Four Seasons shut down.
Yeah.
So I remember, and we lost half of our student population. Most went to either over by Mays, or they went to the Cascade area, or they went to Clayton. And so we were half full, but parents didn't understand that what we had to offer. So we have to get into 2020, and we have to, in that sense, have a business mind. And how do you market your school? How do you market your school to the parent that hates your school or who says my child will never go there? What do you do to change that narrative? And that's a lot of hard work. And that's a lot of conversations of schools looking at what are parents' perceptions and working hard to change it. I was a parent at Cliftondale Elementary School, and in 2015, 16, maybe even 17, we got an F. We had an F on the CCRPI. And us and a group of parents said, that's not good enough. Here's what we have to do. And as a community, we rallied around the school. Cliftondale sits at a solid B. It is a B school. That is community-based. We can do that for every single school, but we're gonna need everybody, and everybody has to have the common interest of it's for the kids.
Absolutely.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's all very good information. So, Ms. Warren, we have 5 minutes left, and I want to give this 5 minutes to you to make sure that the viewers, that the voters know who you are, who Franchesca Warren is, what position she's running for, why she is the one to vote for on August 11th, so that she can wake up on August 12th and be the District 4 representative for Fulton County Public School System. So please tell us your social media platform, where people can find you. Tell us where they can learn more about your history and education, more about your advocacy, and finally, tell us why Franchesca Warren for District 4 Fulton County Public School System.
So you can find me on www.electfranchesca. That is all over social media. And then you can also find me on South Fulton Parents for Education. That is the group that I founded, and we do a lot of work of advocacy in the schools. I would tell parents to vote for me is because it is a vote for yourself. I am a parent myself. I'm an engaged community member. And so I understand the stressors that parents are under. I understand the stressor that kids are under. And I want to work to bridge that gap, and not just work in the sense of taking pictures when everything's fine, but having those hard conversations. And I am an advocate, so that means that I don't scare easy. So I am ready to make hard decisions, and I'm also ready to build those relationships on the board and in the community that I haven't already. We are all about kids. I am all about students. And I firmly believe that if we put students and families first, everything else will fall in line. And so to do that, you need to have students in the system. You need to understand the policies that Fulton County has that affects how it affects families. And so that's for me. I have a rising kindergartner, I have a son who graduated, and I have 2 middle school students. So I understand. And so a vote for me is a vote for equity. It is a vote for voice, and it is a vote for making sure that children and community are at the forefront of what we do in Fulton County schools. I can't hear you.
Very impressed with your background, but I got to tell you, the thing that just threw me back is the fact that you said you have a rising kindergartner. You have one that's already graduated from high school.
Yes.
When I entertain the idea of having another child, that's the thing that always just kind of makes me go, I'm not sure. That's a big gap. But apparently the mother's love can stretch for millennials. So there's no question about that. I want to thank you so much for joining us here on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. And thank you for joining us here on The People's Choice. I hope that our voters and our listeners will make an informed decision come August 11th. Early voting in Fulton County starts July 20th.
Yes.
And so if you feel without a doubt that Ms. Warren is the person to serve you in District 4 of the Fulton County Board of Education, then I encourage you to check her out, but go and vote her in. not out, vote her in. Check her out and vote her in. That way she'll be able to do just what she said she's going to do. And that is being a true advocate for the people in District 4 of Fulton County. But more importantly, an advocate for our students, making sure that they get what they deserve. Putting children first is the most important thing about education. And I think that we have failed to do that across the nation. Not just any one county. So Ms. Warren, thank you so much. Ms. Chapman, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you would like to ask or say?
Thank you guys for giving her the opportunity, and I look forward on August 12th, is she being District 4 school board leader. Thank you.
Say that one more time. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Parting words. Do you have anything else? Any parting words?
No.
Come out and vote.
Vote.
Vote. Vote. Vote. Vote early.
Ladies and gentlemen, on WCEG Talk Radio, the people's choice. Vote, 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 and vote early. Make sure you get out there and do that. Thank you so much, Ms. Warren. Thank you so much, Ms. Chapman, for joining us. You ladies have a good evening.
You do. You do too. Thank you.
This has been Joe Flint live on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. We had a wonderful time this evening chatting with Ms. Warren, who is seeking your support for District 4 in Fulton County. And we also had a wonderful time chatting with Judge Tamika Hrobowski-Houston, who is seeking your support in the Superior Court Judge for Fulton County. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and you have a wonderful night.
Good night. Night.